let's talk about this whole James Charles situation while I do my skincare. I've always been, all about protecting victims and wanting predators to pay the price for their actions. And I think predatory behavior can come in many various different forms. And we all know over the years, no matter how much and how many people are exposed, predators get away with it. And it's always because someone can make money off of them and they're very wealthy or they're just prominent and people don't want to mess with that, right? But with James Charles in particular, what I find to be a major issue is the fact that people might just view him as young. And I personally have fallen victim to this mentality. In the past, when I've heard about 18-year-olds getting in trouble for engaging in certain activities with 17 or 16-year-olds, I would always have this idea of they could have been peers at one point, because the stories that I heard, they were peers. They were either like in school together or they were part of like school related program together. And then when one party turns 18, they're still in an intimate relationship. And then the 18-year-old got in trouble. And in these situations, I was very sympathetic towards the 18-year-old. And when it comes to the age of consent, I really think 18 being the age of consent is already kind of like, that's already a bit icky because 18-year-olds are dumb. But with James Charles, I kind of see that being a problem because he came into the limelight as a teenager himself, and people may not have moved past him being a teenager. A lot of his indiscretions that were exposed in the big expose situation a couple years ago happened when he was like 19, 20, 21. I think now he's 25. But when he was actively reaching out to younger people, he was around those ages and people already knew him by then. But in their minds, he was a 16, 17-year-old doing all these quote unquote amazing things, building a business for himself. So there is this mindset that he's just a young kid. He's just a kiddo. And that might prevent people from really holding him accountable, because I really don't get all the obsession over like his products. And I don't understand why major influencers like Michaela Noguera would like interact with him and engage with him and promote his products. Okay, fine, I know she's not a good example. Her ethics are all over the place, but it is very important to consider that people may be stuck in this, they may be stuck with this idea that he is young. So he could not be grooming young people because he is one of them, you know? That's just my thought on it. Because I see this conversation about James Charles being a predator come up over and over again, year after year, time after time. Something or other sparks this conversation, right? It's either a whole new revelation or like the billboard we're seeing right now, which, oh my God, to spend that kind of money. But it also doesn't help that when things went bad for James Charles with his primary audience in YouTube, he was able to pivot to TikTok, where these are kids. They do not understand the gravity of the situation. They do not understand the depth and damage that grooming could do to someone. Even like, it doesn't even have to be consistent. It doesn't even have to be someone that is actively grooming you. It could just be interactions with adults that are highly inappropriate that could leave a lasting impact on a younger person. But 14, 15-year-olds that are seeing adults talk about James Charles being a predator would just look at us and be like, do they really think we don't know how to take care of ourselves? And that attitude might just be why he still has such a big platform and he still has an audience, which is ridiculous. But then it also boils down to, how are we going to hold these people accountable? Because initially people did try to do the thing where they I won't say cancel. Cancel doesn't work, but they kind of worked on reducing his influence. But, there are so many options. There are so many platforms where people can pivot. They can switch. They can even like switch genres and survive. I think it's a combination of a lot of things. It's adults or even James's peers, like people in their 20s, people younger than me, looking at him and thinking, well, he was young. Like, he wasn't a creepy older dude grooming teenagers. He was a teenager himself, especially if he was like 19, which, I get that mindset. And the other problem is, in fact, teenagers who do not understand what they could be subjected to or what their support of James Charles allows him to get away with. And that is quite scary that teenagers have so much power these days. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have power, but they may not just be ready to wield that kind of power. The kind of power that will allow people to have such an influence. The kind of power that will allow people to become multimillionaires and get away with things. But, that's always been the case. Like, teenagers did carry boy bands for decades. But I think back then, when we say teenagers, we're talking about like 16, 17-year-olds who could like save up enough money to buy CDs and go to concerts. But now when we say teenagers, we're actually talking about like tweens and older. So does a 12-year-old really know what they're doing by watching James Charles's content, buying his products or sharing his videos? Like, do they understand the gravity of the situation? I don't think so. And that's kind of part of the problem. And of course, the adults that still engage with him.